Hey there. Good morning. I'm going to be your MC today for the first 30 seconds of this, and then we'll launch right into the real thing. So I'm Shantanu Gattani. I am with product management at Tenable, and we focus on exposure management. And I'm here to talk about cloud security and preventative security as part of that. So let's get to know ourselves a little bit better. I used to be a developer not so long ago, and back in the day, I loved the fact that we finally had this thing that would let us do things with speed and scale and innovate very, very, very quickly, right? That was the original promise of the cloud, and the promise of the cloud till date still exists. That's exactly what we want to be doing. But even back then, when I was a wee little idealistic developer, I knew a little bit about these guys, right? So as much as we want to move fast and as much as we want to innovate at scale, what always happens, right? There's somebody who's saying, no, stop, stop, stop. You've got to chill out, man. Can't be pushing that deploy button every single day. Can't be sending more things out to production. Can't be putting us at risk, right? Because we've been doing things a certain way, and you got to fall in line, and that's how we're going to keep our business secure. So, what is the reality here, right? The reality is that we still need to be able to enable our businesses. We still need to be able to move fast and at scale, and that's what a lot of companies and a lot of very smart, intelligent people are doing today. But we have to do it along with our partners in security, right? Realistically, we want to be able to enable DevOps. We want to be able to enable developers, and we want to be able to allow that innovation at speed. But security still needs to be able to pull in risk management and exposure management and understand how we can do some of these things securely. So, first answer that we came up with, awesome. Let's get full visibility across every single thing. We're going to poke our heads out. We're going to look at everything. We're going to look at the cloud environment. We're going to look at our on-prem environments, and everything is going to be awesome. Great. By the way, for a later part in the presentation, we're going to need some safe words, and the safe word is giraffe. So, visibility, great, awesome. Let's go do this. Reality kicks in, and there's a tiny little security team that is now at the bottom of this giant funnel that's throwing everything at them, right? Because shift happens, right? Shift happens, and with cloud, with all of that increased speed and scale, you get into this situation. Everybody is geographically spread out. People are deploying different parts of the application. They're delivering infrastructure as code, and what does that really mean? There are still actual services. There are services that cloud providers provide. But we are using them, we're configuring them, we're misconfiguring them. We're taking insecure infrastructure underpinnings, using old versions of things, and then building our applications on top. So there's a massive amount of noise in the system that we generate. And it's still a small set of people who's got to deal with this, right? Therefore, they want to put guardrails. But putting guardrails in this is a little bit challenging. So, let's see how we start solving for some of these things, right? If you take a look at all of the things that you have to watch for, you have to watch for the infrastructure on which you have deployed your cloud applications. Infrastructure can be lift and shift, or hopefully, as more and more people are doing now, a lot more cloud native, right? Containerized. But you have to be able to take a look at how these things are set up and how they're configured, right? Once you do that, you have to be able to take a look at the workloads that you're running on them, and you have what are the vulnerabilities that are on them. But then eventually, what is the business logic that you have, and what are the tools that you've used to build that out, right? So all of these things have to be built up, but they all have to be contextualized. Customers don't want to be looking at things in terms of, hey, what are these 5, 15, 20 services that you're running, right? That's not how it really works. That's not how we're reporting things. You have to be able to report risk grouped by the actual business, right? The line of businesses that you're trying to protect, the company, the organization that you're trying to protect. And that contains assets from all different categories, right? So you have to be able to take all of this information, roll it up with context, and you have to be able to do this at scale. It's the same 2 people, or if you're lucky, 20 people maybe at the end of the day, who are managing this gigantic amount of influx of information, influx of new code, influx of new applications, right? So you still have these two sides of the equation, right? You still have the yin and the yang. How do we make them work cohesively and balanced together, right? You're not going to make developers into security experts. That's not going to happen. I know it didn't happen with me. I got out of that. And you're not going to make security experts understand all pieces of code and the pipeline and how things are being put in, right? Those two things are not going to happen. So trying to force that, trying to put people and move things around is not going to work, right? Process, changing people, hardest thing to do, right? So what are the right ways to allow these people to talk to each other without fighting with each other, right? That's what we want to be able to get to, right? Both sides enabling each other. And that's where we believe preventative security has a role. We have to give both these sides one common language to talk to each other, and that common language is policy as code, right? Let's kind of break that down. Policy. Who's the one who's authoring security policies? Who's the one who's interested in securing the organization? Security teams, right? Now, these security teams are the ones who understand benchmarks. They're the ones who understand security posture, and they're the ones who really ought to be setting that. So give them the tools to author that information, right? Codify that, and then push that all the way across, right? All the way back into the pipeline, back into developers, right? So that as we are building new things, as we are setting up new stuff, that's when we try to enforce those policies, right? So developers don't have to understand policies, they understand code. Security engineers, security teams don't have to understand application code, right? They have to author the policies. And then these two can harmoniously talk to each other and be happy about each other's functions, right? So that's, I'm preaching that because that's what we've built. That's what we want to take to our customers, and that's how we want to evolve security in large distributed organizations who are moving their workloads to the cloud, who are moving aggressively and quickly to cloud all of their applications, all of their workloads. So let's take a look at some of this stuff in action, right? I've told you why this is important. I've told you what needs to be done. Now let's do a little bit of the how, right? So the first piece, reactive monitoring, sticking your head up over the clouds is always going to be necessary because there are certain things that are only going to be visible and available over there, right? But you want to reduce, you want to narrow that. So first, what happens, right? When you're looking at things reactively, and this is part of the product, I'm not going to go through every little thing, but as you're going through, you hook into your cloud providers, you start seeing alerts, you start seeing policy failures, you start seeing findings in terms of vulnerabilities, you start seeing misconfigurations, and then voila, now I have one misconfiguration which applies to 13,000 resources. What do you want me to do about that, as a security engineer? I'm not going to go through 13,000 resources and going to try and fix all of them. I could. I need to know that this exists so that I can report the risk. But I cannot physically do this, right? There has to be a better way. We can create tickets. We can assign those tickets to individuals, to different teams. But at the end of the day, somebody still has to do that work. So this is great, but not for 13,000 resources. Still necessary, and still very, very important to mitigate things that are unknown. Things that you do not know at the time you're developing, at the time you're deploying. So that can only be done here. But the downside of this is it's expensive. It takes a lot of people out of their workflows, out of their day. You don't want to be getting a call on the weekend that, hey, we've got Log4Shell. Right? Okay, what do you want me to do? It's everywhere, right? It's slow because now you are organizing and coordinating multiple teams across large organizations. How do you fix this, right? And it's very, very disruptive. You stay exposed for the longest period of time. You're not fixing these problems overnight. I mean, I still have nightmares about what happened, December a couple of years ago, when I'm like, yeah, okay, here goes the vacation, here goes the holiday season, right? You don't want to be in that place. So how do we get this? How do we get this better? All right, clicker work. Thank you. All right, so you can get preventative. Right? We're now all aware of how things are deployed in pipelines. There are multiple different gates. It's a natural place to put security into the whole system, right? So scan at different stages and fix over there. So let's take a look, right? And this is where that policy that you're running in runtime gets implemented and enforced in pipelines, right? So sample Jenkins pipeline, you are running your application, you're going through different stages of the pipeline. You run a scan. You run a security scan as part of that pipeline. Now, this is working on that infrastructure. It's working on the workloads, trying to figure out vulnerabilities, trying to figure out exposure via misconfigurations, right? Great. Scan finishes in pipeline, we stop. We just say, hit the brakes right there. Let's not take something that is misconfigured or that has vulnerabilities and deploy that. Because, oh boy, it's much simpler, much easier to fix this now than it would be later on. What we do on top of that is, because we are aware of code and cloud, we can auto-generate pull requests at that same time based on your preferences. Those pull requests go right back into your dev systems, your SCMs, and that's where developers can simply merge those pull requests in. So we're auto-generating and doing remediation as code as part of this entire system, right? At that point, you just have to merge, so humans are involved in that process, but it's hopefully a single click, and then you go back in, you run your pipelines, and now you're clean. You got a clean run, you go through, you deploy, successful, good, clean, secure application is now part of the system, right? So now we've gone through and we've done that. Awesome, right? We've solved a few problems. We don't have known issues making all the way out to the cloud. Great. Reduce runtime risk, reduce alerts, we're seeing fewer things. Now I, as part of the security team, can breathe easy. DevOps teams, developers can enjoy the holiday season. Everything's good to go. But whenever there is a finding, there is still this going back, right? I'm still being taken out of my daily workflow. I wake up in the morning not to fix security problems as a developer. I wake up in the morning to develop new and interesting things. Now I have to go back and do all of this reassessment, right? So there is still improvements that we can make, right? And there's still those delays that we can get out of. Awesome. So let's see how we can take this same preventative approach one step further, right? Take this to the people when they're actually building rather than when they are in the stage of deploying. So this is where, if you empower developers with the same policy as code, the same thing that the security teams are authoring and running in runtime, that same thing goes back into developers' IDEs, where as they are writing their CFTs, they can run scans inline and they can get suggestions on what are the improvements they need to make. So now they're not even committing this code. They're not sending this into your GitHub or code commit or wherever developers are. And instead, you are clean from the beginning, right? You have the fewest findings because now your runtime is only really the unknowns, and you have fewest exposures, right? That's how you end up achieving that balance, right? You get to that state of nirvana, yin yang. Pick your culture. But that's really how you reduce your runtime risks. You do, your time to remediation is significantly reduced because it's all happening early, right? And you kind of balance that speed and risk situation out. So your security team is happy, your developers, your DevOps, SecOps teams are happier, and away we go. So I'll kind of try to wrap this up really quickly. Some of this stuff you can try today. Go back, check us out. Terrascan is Tenable's open source project that allows exactly for this to happen. The shift left security, the deployment and pipelines, making sure that we can do preventative as well as proactive security. So please do try that out. And if you want to learn more, come by and visit us. We're right here on the floor, booth 453. Thank you. Appreciate you guys taking the time.